Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are diving deep into a topic that sounds maybe a little philosophical at first glance,
Right.
but it has terrifyingly practical and often lethal consequences. We're talking about the harm caused by false beliefs and misinformation.
And it's so critically important that we look at this. I mean, it's really easy to just dismiss someone holding a false belief as, I don't know, just being wrong.
Yeah, maybe a little quirky, or you think, oh, that's harmless.
Exactly. Harmlessly misinformed. But when you actually look at the source material we've compiled, I mean, the actual data on the outcomes, the cost isn't intellectual.
No.
It is physical, it's societal, and it's often lethal.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about real-world destruction on scales ranging from, a single individual tragedy all the way up to global policy paralysis.
So our mission today is to act as your guides through this source material. We want to understand exactly how wrong ideas, even when they're held with the deepest, most sincere good intentions, can lead to disastrous outcomes. We're going to break this down simply. We'll be using clear concepts and lots of analogies so that anyone, even if you're just, say, catching up on a topic for a meeting or
prepping for an 8th grade science test.
Exactly. Anyone can grasp it. We want you to have those aha moments without all the information overload or, the complex psychological jargon.
And we really need that simplicity because the core concept here is that these false beliefs, they create significant measurable harm
Across the board.
across every single level of human experience, individual health, societal cohesion, and environmental stability. The damage it's just comprehensive.
Yeah.
And it all stems from a single failure point, adopting a fundamentally incorrect idea about how the world works.
Okay, so let's establish the central framework we're going to be using today. I want you to imagine a false belief as being given a seriously wrong map.
Okay.
This map, it might look great. It might be colorful, beautifully designed, looks totally official. Maybe the person who gave it to you, they sincerely believe it's perfect and true.
They're trying to help.
They're trying to help, but the map is just fundamentally incorrect about the terrain that's ahead of you.
And here's the paradox we're going to keep running into. No matter how hard you try to drive, right, no matter how carefully you follow the instructions on that map, and no matter how fast you go.
Which is your good intention, your effort.
Exactly, that's your good intention. But if the map is wrong, you will end up lost. Or, even worse, you'll end up driving straight off a cliff.
And today, we are looking at the cliffs people have driven off because they were using bad maps. The source material really forces us to separate that intention from the outcome.
That analogy is it's perfect because it highlights that intent and outcome are completely separate physical realities.
Right.
You might be the most loving, the most careful, the most compassionate driver in the entire world. You're desperately trying to get to a hospital, but a faulty map or a broken compass, it still sends you due east when you absolutely needed to go west.
Your heart was in the right place.
Your moral integrity could be completely intact, but the physical destination is still catastrophe.
Exactly. And the most chilling examples of this separation between intent and outcome, they happen when we apply these wrong maps to the human body itself. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the most immediate, the most scary consequences. What happens to our bodies and our minds when we choose the wrong map for our health?
Okay, so we're starting with section 1, focusing on that immediate and personal harm, and specifically medical misinformation. The core issue here, and it's a simple one, is that false beliefs can delay or completely prevent necessary life-saving medical treatment.
And we have seen this tragedy play out just repeatedly over the last 2 decades. It's often linked directly to the misinformation around vaccine refusal.
Yeah.
This is probably the highest profile collision between a false belief and a devastating physical reality that we have.
It is. The source material focuses really heavily on the consequences related to vaccines and the return of diseases like measles. So let's expand on that body armor analogy you mentioned, just for clarity.
Let's do it. Okay, so think of your immune system as a fantastic, highly trained army. And it's defending your city, which is your body.
Okay, got it.
This army is incredible. But when it encounters a truly new microscopic invader, a deadly virus like measles, it sometimes doesn't recognize the enemy until that enemy is already inside the city walls.
And causing chaos.
Causing chaos, burning buildings, severely damaging the infrastructure. It's too late.
So vaccines, in this analogy, they're like special body armor and and training manuals that you give your army ahead of time.
Exactly. There are pieces of harmless, outdated enemy equipment or maybe detailed blueprints that show your army exactly what that microscopic invader looks like a picture of the measles virus.
So when the real threat shows up,
The defense is immediate, it's coordinated, it's overwhelming, the armor works.
but then you get these false anti-vax beliefs, and they're a direct result of a specific, now retracted and thoroughly debunked scientific paper by Andrew Wakefield, the one claiming a link between the MMR vaccine and autism.
That's the false map.
That is the false map. And it's like someone telling millions of people to leave that body armor at home, not because the armor fails in battle, no, but because someone said that maybe the armor makes their socks itchy, or perhaps the training manual causes some unproven side effect.
And this choice, which is driven by a deeply held but completely factually incorrect belief, has just devastating real-world consequences.
It does. The source materials really stress that this choice doesn't just put the unvaccinated person at risk. It exposes vulnerable populations.
The most vulnerable.
Infants who are too young for the shot, people with compromised immune systems. It exposes them to epidemics. Measles, which was once considered an eradicated disease in developed countries thanks to this body armor.
Right, we beat it.
We beat it, and now has made a comeback in localized outbreaks.
And the tragic outcome is always the same: outbreaks and, sadly, the preventable deaths of children and the most vulnerable in our communities.
It is a stunning example of how a singular, proven false data point, a deeply flawed map, can cause a massive, predictable increase in human suffering.
What's truly fascinating to me, and also deeply disturbing, is the complete disconnect between the emotional basis of the false belief and the physical reality of the outcome.
Say more about that.
Well, the belief might be, I'm protecting my child from a potential, unproven long-term side effect. That's the intention.
Right, it's a protective instinct.
A protective instinct. But the reality, the map's actual destination is, I am exposing my child and others to a known, historically lethal disease. This brings us back to that core moral question the source material raises, the loving parent paradox. I understand the concept, but surely the intention has to count for something, right? If they genuinely believe they are saving their child, how can we morally equate that choice to, like, a malicious action?
And that is the ultimate challenge posed by the material, and it's crucial we address it head on. The loving parent paradox doesn't equate the action to malice.
Okay.
It argues that the outcome is the same, regardless of the intent. The paradox illustrates that good intentions are simply not enough to prevent harm. They're only half of the equation.
So, okay, take the example of a loving parent who desperately wants to save their sick child from, say, a terminal illness. They are motivated by the deepest, most virtuous love imaginable.
Yet, fueled by misinformation they found online, or from alternative sources, they could end up accelerating their child's demise.
How?
By choosing false remedies, turning to faith healers instead of oncologists, or refusing a life-saving blood transfusion, or rejecting proven chemotherapy in favor of some untested, unproven alternative cure.
And this happens because they fundamentally believe the wrong information is the right information.
They are following the wrong map with absolute conviction that it is the road to health.
It's a road paved with love, but it still leads directly to the edge of the cliff.
Precisely. If you believe the right map shows a shortcut that goes through a minefield, you are still going to hit a mine. It doesn't matter how pure your destination is.
Wow.
The loving intention makes the tragedy more profound, of course, but it does not in any way reduce the physical destruction caused by the choice. This really underscores that truth isn't optional. It's the prerequisite for effective moral action. If your facts are wrong, your loving actions become destructive.
Okay, moving on from these voluntary medical decisions, the source material also dives into the powerful impact of false beliefs that originate internally.
Right.
Specifically, delusions that are linked to psychosis and severe isolation. These are entirely internally generated wrong maps.
And here it's important to say that delusions are not just simple mistakes about facts. They are extreme, powerful, fixed false beliefs.
Fixed is the key word there, isn't it?
It is. They're often completely impervious to contradictory evidence. They're frequently linked to severe mental health conditions, and they can cause individuals to neglect their health or, in the worst cases, tragically, even engage in self-harm.
So let's focus on persecutory delusions first. The source describes these as the belief that others are actively conspiring against you.
To help you visualize this, imagine it's like you're wearing special internal glasses that are permanently glued onto your face. And these glasses make everyone you see look like a secret agent who is plotting your downfall.
Everyone.
Everyone. You might see your best friend, your coworker, your doctor, even your loving family members, but those glasses warp reality until you see only threats, traps, and complex coordinated conspiracies against you.
And the common themes in the sources surrounding these delusions are things like believing their phones are tapped, their food is poisoned, or that they're under constant surveillance through microchips or drones. That must create an absolutely exhausting internal environment.
Absolutely. The consequence is immediate and it's profound. Severe isolation. I mean, think about it. If everyone you know, even those closest to you, are perceived as threats, as secret agents plotting your harm,
You can't trust anyone.
you can't trust anyone, you can't seek help, you can't maintain relationships, and you certainly can't accept treatment.
And the physical cost of this unrelenting false map must be severe.
The sources confirm this. It results in intense, chronic anxiety, relentless hypervigilance, and just profound stress. This constant state of fear and emotional distress, it has a physiological impact.
It actually hurts your body.
Yes. It leads to related health issues that can shorten lifespans.
Yeah.
They're living in a self-made, neurological prison built entirely on a false reality, and that internal reality destroys their external health.
That sounds absolutely crippling. And we see a related category in the material.
There.
Religious delusions.
Yes.
Yeah.
These are powerful false beliefs often focused on extreme religious guilt, fear of damnation, or a sense of being controlled by or mandated to follow extreme divine instruction. These delusions can become so strong that they override basic human self-preservation or social norms.
What are the real-world harms we observe from that?
Well, the consequence is that individuals, driven by this internal false mandate, may neglect necessary medical care. They might believe that getting treatment is a test of faith that they're supposed to fail. Or they may engage in serious self-harm based on that false belief. We see cases of people starving themselves to purge a sin, refusing shelter in the cold, or inflicting severe physical pain as a penance they believe is commanded by this internal wrong map.
It links right back to the loving parent paradox.
It does. A powerful, sincere, but fundamentally false beliefs overrides the rational need for survival and well-being.
So whether it's medical misinformation chosen by a parent or these internal profound delusions shaping a personal reality, the result is the same. The wrong map leads directly to physical destruction or severe life limitation.
We've established the individual harm pretty clearly. So now let's move from a personal health disaster to how false beliefs poison entire communities and even the planet.
Right.
This is where, when enough people share the wrong map, it moves from an individual tragedy to a systemic, enduring disaster. These are group-level wrong maps.
The transition here is crucial. We just talked about an individual wearing secret agent glasses, the persecutory delusions. This next section on societal discrimination and violence. It shows what happens when an entire society puts on those glasses.
Yes.
And they decide that one specific, often vulnerable group is the secret agent plotting their downfall.
That's a perfect connection. The core concept here is that systemic false beliefs and discriminatory stereotypes, they perpetuate massive inequality and violence that can last for centuries. The source material is very clear. Beliefs in racial or gender inferiority are foundational false beliefs. It's the idea that one group of people is inherently less valuable, less human, or morally compromised compared to another.
And these beliefs then become the system's operating manual. If your map says that a certain group is inferior, then removing their rights or opportunities, it's not seen as discriminatory or cruel.
No, it's seen as logical.
It's seen as logical classification or necessary security.
Exactly. The source mentions the most infamous, large-scale example of a false belief causing this kind of harm, the Holocaust. This was a systemic atrocity built entirely on a sophisticated, industrialized false map of racial superiority and inferiority.
It wasn't random cruelty.
Not at all. It was the logical endpoint of a fundamentally untrue premise about human identity.
But the source material also forces us to confront that this is not just history. The reports provide these heartbreaking examples of modern superstitions causing terrible harm today, right now.
The prime example cited is the horrifying attacks on people with albinism in some parts of Africa.
Right.
These attacks continue due to completely baseless superstitious myths surrounding the power of their body parts for ritual purposes.
Yeah.
This false belief drives intense, often murderous, violence and mutilation against a group purely because of a genetic difference.
And then there's the ongoing practice of violence rooted purely in these deep, dark, false beliefs. Women and children who are still persecuted, tortured, and even burned alive for witchcraft in certain regions. This isn't historical fiction. This is lethal, immediate violence based purely on the false belief that someone has supernatural, malicious power and is using it to harm the community.
It's the societal manifestation of the persecutory delusion we talked about earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
The group believes a specific vulnerable person, often a poor woman or child, is a secret agent of harm. And when that group-held false belief is acted upon, the consequences are immediate and deadly. It shows that discriminatory stereotypes aren't just rude or unfair.
No, they're much more than that.
They are foundational maps that justify the worst actions imaginable against fellow human beings.
That sets the stage perfectly for our environmental discussion. Because false beliefs don't just poison our social relationships, they poison our relationship with the natural world, moving us to the planetary scale.
And this section starts with a very specific, tragic example of biodiversity loss: rhino poaching, which is driven entirely by an expensive, false belief about medicine.
The core example here is the false belief that a rhinoceros horn acts as a powerful aphrodisiac, or a cancer cure, or some miraculous detoxifying medicine in certain traditional practices.
But the scientific reality, which the source material really emphasizes, is that the horn itself is composed almost entirely of keratin,
Keratin.
the exact same protein that makes up your fingernails, your hair, and horse hooves. There's zero evidence it possesses any medicinal properties beyond, a placebo effect.
So the analogy here is that people are thinking a piece of incredibly expensive plastic, or really a giant fingernail, is magic medicine.
Precisely. If people were this insistent that eating their own toenails cured cancer, we'd have a much bigger and maybe smellier public health crisis.
Yeah.
But the core mechanism of belief is identical.
Right.
The belief doesn't help anyone's health or vitality, but the enormous demand created by that false belief has generated a massive criminal black market. That demand, in turn, pushes an entire magnificent species toward extinction.
So the animal pays the ultimate price.
The ultimate existential price for human ignorance and the power of a false map.
And if rhino poaching is the micro-environmental disaster driven by false beliefs, then climate change denial is the macro-environmental disaster. It affects the fate of all of us.
This is where group-level wrong maps affect literally everyone, causing policy paralysis at the highest levels of governance. The source mentions the prevalence of conspiracy theories about climate change.
The idea that it's all a hoax.
A hoax, orchestrated by scientists or elites or foreign powers to control us.
Let's use that vivid analogy again. Imagine a giant meteor is definitively headed for your town.
Okay.
It's huge, it's visible, and 97% of the scientists are all screaming about the impact trajectory and offering solutions. But half the town leadership, fed by these conspiracy theories, insists it's just a balloon.
Or a trick of the light.
Right, maybe a trick of the light designed by a rival town to steal your tax money. And so they refuse to fund the SHIELD project.
The consequence of that refusal is global catastrophe. These deeply held false beliefs and denial strategies, they actively hinder necessary policy action.
Like carbon regulation.
Carbon regulation, massive infrastructure shifts, global treaties, all the things needed to combat global warming.
And what the source materials really underscore here is the time sensitivity. Every moment that collective action is delayed because a wrong map is being followed, it just exacerbates the effects of climate change.
It makes the necessary corrections later exponentially harder, more costly, and possibly even impossible.
It's a classic case of delaying the inevitable.
Or in this case, delaying necessary prevention because the map you were looking at says, warning, meteor ahead. But you believe the map is fake and designed to fleece you.
But the result is the same.
The town gets hit. Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, because preventing global catastrophes, or even just dealing with smaller ones, it often comes down to massive amounts of money and political willpower. Let's try to quantify some of that damage.
This is where we look at the financial and the large-scale systemic damage. And it's often caused by fear, confusion, and most importantly, just misplaced resources. We're going to start with the costs of supporting pseudoscience, using the UK's National Health Service, the NHS, as a clear, though difficult, case study.
And the core dilemma here, as the source materials reveal, is that the direct cost of supporting unproven treatments and outright pseudoscience is incredibly difficult to track.
Why is that?
Because in a massive bureaucratic system like the NHS, money spent on scientifically inert remedies often gets lost. It gets lumped into generalized reports about clinical waste or fraud or just ineffective treatment protocols. The system simply wasn't designed to tag money spent on things that scientifically fundamentally don't work.
So the source singles out homeopathy as the most cited and famous pseudoscience that was funded by the NHS for a time. It makes it the best example we have of this kind of quantified waste.
We should probably define homeopathy clearly for our framework, because understanding its fundamental scientific flaw is essential to understanding the waste.
Good idea.
Homeopathy is a treatment based on the idea that highly diluted substances, and I mean highly diluted, so much that literally 0 molecules of the original substance remain, can cure an illness.
So if we use the analogy of dilution, imagine you have a large classroom fund, that's the NHS budget, and it's set aside for proven textbooks and supplies that have been tested and are known to work.
Okay?
Homeopathy, in this context, was spending part of that fund on magic water or memory sugar.
We can make that scientific point even sharper using some basic chemistry concepts. Scientists use something called Avogadro's number.
I remember that from school. It's a huge number.
It's a giant number, 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd power. And it tells us how many molecules are in a specific volume of a substance. When homeopaths dilute a substance past a certain point, usually what's called a 12C dilution, they pass the limit of Avogadro's number.
And what does that mean in simple terms?
It means that statistically, there are no molecules of the original substance left in the water or the sugar pill. It is chemically identical to pure water or pure sugar.
Which means the system was spending real, scarce money on treatments that were biologically and chemically inert?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And while the estimate for broader waste, fraud, and clinical inefficiencies in the NHS has been massive, some source reports estimate total figures as high as £5.7 billion yearly.
Wow.
The actual documented direct cost of the most famous pseudoscience, homeopathy, was much smaller, but still significant and symptomatic of the problem.
So what are the specific costs we can actually nail down from the source material regarding homeopathy before the nationwide ban?
The funding peaked at about £140,000 annually before its full discontinuation across England by 2017.
Okay.
And we have even more specific data points. Some local areas, they're called clinical commissioning groups, such as those in the Northeast, spent around £92,000 in the 2014-2015 period alone.
A total of £140,000 might seem like a small drop in the bucket compared to the billions lost to fraud.
It might, on the surface.
But it's a huge chunk of money for treatments that are scientifically inert. We have to consider the opportunity cost here.
That's the critical analysis. That £140,000, which is enough to fund several nurses or provide thousands of hours of crucial, evidence-based physical therapy,
What's spent on sugar pills?
was spent on sugar pills. Even if the current quantified NHS costs for pseudoscience, post-homeopathy ban, are elusive and likely under £10 million annually, the financial harm is undeniable. It is money spent on the wrong map, diverting resources from the correct, proven one.
And the indirect costs, which the sources note are harder to quantify, are perhaps even more damaging.
Like what?
That includes the time wasted by doctors arguing with patients who demand unproven remedies, or the inevitable cost of delayed evidence-based care, because a patient or a parent advocated for a miracle cure based on a false belief instead.
It creates a ripple effect of inefficiency and delayed treatment throughout the entire system. And the economic harm isn't just about healthcare spending, it's about existential decisions for our civilization, which brings us to nuclear energy misinformation and the political map.
This is a truly devastating example. It's a case where the fear generated by the false map caused exponentially more damage, both human and economic, than the actual measurable physical danger. We call this phenomenon radiophobia.
Let's use the monster under the bed analogy again. Radiation is invisible, it's difficult to detect without specialized equipment, and it's spooky.
Like a monster under your bed.
Exactly. A monster you can't see but you know is there. Because of misinformation and panic, people were convinced the monster was coming to kill them instantly, even when scientific data showed the danger was contained, localized, or manageable. The fear of the monster became bigger than the monster itself.
And if you look at the consequence cited after the Chernobyl disaster in 1986, the initial explosion was a catastrophe, absolutely. But the societal response that followed was dramatically amplified by false beliefs and widespread, often politically motivated misinformation about the true danger of radiation exposure.
The sources confirm that this wave of fear led directly to over 100,000 unnecessary abortions in the affected regions.
100,000.
Yes, People were so terrified by the reports, which were sometimes exaggerated by the media or foreign governments, that they believed their bodies and their pregnancies were fatally contaminated, even in areas with negligible actual exposure.
That is an unimaginable level of societal terror. The false map convinced tens of thousands of people that carrying their pregnancy to term meant fatal contamination. And this led to mass medical interventions that weren't medically necessary at all, but were psychologically driven by the terror that was fueled by misinformation.
And if Chernobyl showed the psychological damage, the Fukushima incident in Japan in 2011 provides an even more shocking quantification of preventable deaths caused purely by the response to the false map.
The source material stresses this contrast so powerfully. The panicked evacuation and the resulting political shutdown of all of Japan's nuclear power plants, that ended up killing thousands of people.
Right.
Even though the actual radiation exposure from the accident wasn't a danger to anyone in the general public area.
You need to think about that carefully.
Yeah.
0 radiation-related deaths among the public were linked directly to the Fukushima meltdowns. 0.
And yet thousands of people died.
Yet the societal response, the rapid, panicked evacuation of thousands of vulnerable, elderly, and sick people, often moving them unnecessarily, caused thousands of deaths. Deaths due to stress, lack of proper hospital care during the chaotic move, and exposure to poor evacuation conditions. It was the societal response to the false belief, the radiophobia, not the underlying hazard, that was lethal.
And zooming out, this radiophobia, this fear of the invisible monster, coupled with climate change denial and the ongoing misinformation spread by the fossil fuel industry, has a massive global consequence.
It creates policy gridlock that threatens our future.
Right. The source materials are unequivocal. Nuclear energy is one of our most effective carbon-free tools in the fight against climate change.
Because it provides clean, dense, reliable power without massive carbon emissions.
But the deep-seated fear of the invisible monster, the false map of radiation danger, prevents its broader adoption globally, and that accelerates our reliance on fossil fuels and ultimately accelerates climate change instead of combating it.
It's the ultimate tragedy of the wrong map.
Yeah.
The solution to a global threat is right there. It's accessible, it's proven.
But we are too afraid to take it because we believe the deeply ingrained misinformation surrounding it. We have now spanned the entire spectrum of harm, from a child dying of measles to a community burning a woman for witchcraft to a country shutting down its best tool against climate change. The common thread is the immense power of an untrue idea.
And notice that in every single one of these examples, from the loving parent to the city council, the person or the people making the damaging choice, they truly believed they were acting wisely, safely, or virtuously.
We've seen the staggering spectrum of harm, both individual and systemic. So now let's wrap up by talking about why truth isn't just some academic requirement. It is the essential foundation for making any good choice, whether that's personal, societal, or political.
The sources introduce a powerful ancient Latin principle here that I think perfectly summarizes this entire deep dive. Nulla virtus sine verite.
Which means, quite simply, no virtue without truth.
That phrase perfectly encapsulates everything we've talked about today. If virtue, the goal of making the right or the good choice, is finding true north, your mortal destination,
then truth is the compass.
the truth is the functioning, verified compass.
And if your compass is broken, or if someone gave you a fraudulent compass, you just can't navigate correctly. You can't know what the right thing to do is, even if you desperately, sincerely want to do good.
And we have to revisit that central paradox one last time to really cement this concept. The loving parent who tragically ends up harming their child with the purest intentions. It is the starkest illustration of nulla virtus sine verite.
They possess the virtue of love, of compassion, of dedication, the highest possible moral intent.
But they lack the truth. They lack the factual knowledge of disease or treatment efficacy or the basic chemistry of a substance. And because they lack the facts, their loving moral choice led to a catastrophic, unintended consequence.
So you can't make moral, effective choices based on false beliefs.
You can't. Without facts, without verite, good intentions are simply a powerful mechanism for tragedy.
It makes you realize that the fight against misinformation isn't just about winning an argument or being intellectually correct.
Not at all.
It's about preventing suffering. It is a matter of life and death, of species extinction and global security. It means recognizing that accepting a false belief is not a harmless hobby. It's a profound risk assessment failure.
The source material forces us to confront this reality. False beliefs don't just lead to minor mistakes or intellectual errors. They lead to tragic, preventable suffering on massive scales. Whether it's the cost of 140,000 pounds diverted from cancer research to sugar pills.
Or the thousands of lives lost to unnecessary evacuations fueled by panic.
The cost is quantifiable, and it is lethal.
So here is the ultimate deep dive, the provocative thought we want to leave you with based on everything we've just unpacked. We've seen that often the people holding these damaging false beliefs, whether they are anti-vax parents, climate deniers, or radiophobes, they sincerely believe they're doing the right thing for themselves, for their families, for the planet. The ultimate challenge isn't just correcting the facts, which is hard enough. It is accepting that the only bridge between those intensely good intentions and an actual good outcome is absolute verifiable truth.
It requires a profound humility, doesn't it? To look at our own map, the one we rely on for navigating the world, and to ask, is this actually right? Or is this just what I want to believe because it aligns with my fears or my community?
Because if the map is wrong, the destination is wrong.
And the consequences are lethal.
Thanks for coming along on this deep dive with us. Remember to follow us on your favorite podcast platform, and see you on the next dive.